What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Bob Arum. Bob Arum rips into Errol Spence as he blames Errol Spence for the super fight between Errol Spence and his fighter Terence Crawford from not taking place. He says this. He says, don't blame Al Haymon. You can't blame Al Haymon anymore, or PBC. You should blame Errol Spence. When asked about the fight, he throws out numbers and percentages. If he wanted to fight Terence Crawford, he would have fought Terence Crawford. He doesn't want to fight. He feels that he's not confident that he will win. That's the truth. Can't you guys see that? Now, let me counterpunch what Bob Arum said. A lot of times people blame other people behind the scenes. And that's a good scapegoat when you're dealing with something that you do. Errol Spence is a fighter. I know he has people looking for fights, advising him fights like Al Haymon, but eventually you have your own voice, or you claim to have your own voice. Now, everybody knows how I feel about that. You know, it's not a fact that being the master, it's the fact that, you know, a guy that controls you makes you think that you are the master, that you are your own boss. You know, that's a great misconception. You know, thinks you, hey, I'm the top dog, and not knowing that your strings are being pulled by someone else. You just don't really know it, or other people just don't know it. Now, Errol Spence throwing out percentages and numbers, that does sounds fishy, because the last thing he should be worried about is numbers and figures when it comes to the best fighter. The same fighter that he talks about doesn't make any money, or doesn't make as much money as him, is the same fighter he put on his pound-for-pound list. So, obviously, Errol Spence is more concerned with the amount of money that he revenues versus his rival. So the problem with Errol Spence is he's trying to be like other people. He's trying to be more like Floyd. Floyd did the same thing when you dealt with Manny Pacquiao. Whenever it came to Manny Pacquiao, Floyd threw around numbers and percentages because he was hanging around Al Haymon. I don't think that's Errol Spence's problem. I think Errol Spence's problem is everyone uses Floyd's base model as a way of trying to upsell themselves, or interject business into something that people are not really concerned with. Now, when we're dealing with Errol Spence we're also dealing with the fact that Errol Spence has a network tribalship issue. You know, he's a company man. And it's a contradiction being a fighter and a company man. You can't accommodate both a lot of times. He sits there and talks about how he hates ESPN, how he hates Top Rank, how he didn't want to sit beside top ranked people. Like, where does this tribalism come from? You're all fighters. So I never really understood why he had that type of name or that attitude towards fighters like that. However, that really doesn't hold weight because it's contradicting, because he was at a DAZN card with DAZN people all over, and he had no problem. In fact, he was trying to issue and promote a fight between him and the fighter Canelo Alvarez that was on the main card. And he had no problem with DAZN whatsoever, and it's weird. So you have a problem with a Bob Arum, but not DAZN? And that tells me something else. That tells me that Errol Spence is only worried about making the most money. And if they do have some type of voice over there at Al Haymon and PBC, I think he would have said, I want Terence Crawford. But Errol Spence is looking after the money. He's going after the money. But Bob's right. Errol Spence, I don't know if he's afraid of Terence Crawford. But I think Terence Crawford is that guy he doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to fight him. You see what I'm saying? That fight is not the fight on the table. That fight's not going to happen. People need to give that fight up. Bob Arum can talk all he wants, but let me counterpunch Bob Arum for a minute, okay? Bob Arum is the same guy that lowballs everyone, that refuses to pay the guy that he feels is the best pound-for-pound fighter the money that he deserves, the money that was on his contract. It doesn't matter what Bob Arum says about, oh, I'm paying him too much money. It matters about the contract. And Bob Arum knows he can't breach that contract or go against that contract, because then Terence Crawford could turn into someone like Canelo Alvarez, and how Canelo Alvarez departed from Oscar De La Hoya. That's how he left Oscar De La Hoya, because of the contract that he signed didn't coincide to what he was actually getting. But Bob Arum wants to be a bitch about it, wants to talk about, oh, how he's paying him too much money. Well, everybody knows you're a cheap ass at this point. So it's kind of misleading for him to say the things that he's saying about Errol Spence, where you're offering Sean Porter $1 million. And you're admitting, Bob Arum admitted he was cheap. He's just a cheap promoter. He's an old school cheap promoter, and he doesn't believe in giving his fighters, his best fighters, the money that they deserve, despite, what they can do in the ring. And that's sad. So yeah, it might be truth of what he's saying, but he's not out of the clear either. Because if it was up to him, honestly, and he had to throw an offer to Errol Spence, it wouldn't be enough. But then again, with the projections that Errol Spence is looking for, it wouldn't be enough anyway. Because Errol Spence has his sights on bigger fights. So, but let's look at it this way. If Errol Spence doesn't get the Canelo fight, he ducked. That's a sure sign that he ducked. I think he ducked anyway, because there may be some truth, and I believe there is some truth. Errol Spence knows the talent Terence Crawford has. He knows that. He knows that Terence Crawford is one of those guys that could upset him. And if that's the case, ain't no way in hell he's going to get a Canelo fight then. So this is what you have. This is what you have, and this is why you have it. Errol Spence wants more money, and Terence Crawford ain't providing him the money that he feels he's worth for to fight someone as dangerous as Terence Crawford. You got to think about it. He went from, you got to get a belt first, right? When he got a belt, then he said, well, I can fight somebody else. That's not the fucking conversation. The conversation, you told Terence Crawford, get a belt and we can fight. Look, that's a no-brainer. Let's just turn it around. What if Terence Crawford would have did that to a fighter? Terence Crawford ain't never ducked nobody. Errol Spence has. But it's karma, baby. Errol Spence might get what he's looking for and fight Canelo. And when you're fighting that red-headed Mexican, you're going to find out real quick you're going to earn every bit of that money that you think you want when you get in the ring with him. Because when Canelo Alvarez fucking decapitates him, throwing nasty hooks to the body and the head, and he's getting punched by somebody that's a true middleweight, that he ain't the weight bully and has the weight advantage no more, he's soon going to figure out, fuck, this is what it's about. Okay, so he going to rise and fall all in one night. That's my counterpunch on that. You guys tell me what you think about Bob Arum's statements and my semi-rant. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been counterpunching. Peace.